It is truly an honor to be here, and I know we follow, as was mentioned, one of the greatest governors that North Carolina and the nation has ever seen, in Governor Hunt, and our current Governor Cooper. And we stand between you and an afternoon break. So we're going to do the best we possibly can to make this entertaining. In fact, the group up here doesn't know, but we're actually going to do some line dancing off to the side.
Yeah.
Since I'm a TV guy, I thought it was important to say something that you might remember for the next 5 minutes, if nothing else. But let's set the stage for our discussion this afternoon. You've heard a lot of great information, and what we're hoping to do is personalize it with some information and some anecdotal stories to kind of layer your understanding of how important this session is today. So supportive community networks are comprised of organizations that intervene to promote economic stability and security for community members so that they can pursue education and job training opportunities that will offer pathways to higher achievement, earnings, and career advancement. And I'd like to just take a moment to personalize that for you. I want to introduce you to a mother who was a graduate of Shaw University, who left Delaware to come back home to her native Raleigh. She had a 4-year-old son with a lot of energy and a big afro. Missing his father, who was absent from his life. And although this extraordinary young woman was a gifted school teacher, she didn't think she could make ends meet on a school teacher's salary. So she tapped into the resources of the great state of her home state of North Carolina and went to North Carolina State University to earn a master's degree in administration, and went to North Carolina Central University to earn a master's degree in counseling. And during the day when she would pursue her graduate school studies, she left that young 4-year-old boy with his grandmother as a first introduction to what we now call family, friends, and neighbor, or FFN providers. And you see that young boy learned something much later in life. He heard something about these TV shows called soap operas. But when he was growing up in Raleigh, he didn't hear the term soap operas, he's heard the term stories. And so when The Price is Right would go off and the music for The Young and the Restless would come on, that was his key to go to his bedroom and turn on a little black and white television, didn't have cable, but to watch Sesame Street. And that's where he learned to read. And so only in North Carolina and in America, as I told a reception last night, could a little boy who learned how to read watching Sesame Street return to be the very chief content officer that stands before you and has the privilege of mediating this conversation today. Only in America and North Carolina is it possible for me to be the chief content officer of UNC-TV, the place that afforded me an opportunity to grow. And so today I am extremely excited to share the stage with leaders who have examples of success, who will share their processes in applying holistic models of support services that remove the barriers to upward mobility, much like the barriers to our own upward mobility removed in my own life. You'll hear from David and Tara in a bit, but I'd like to start off with Michelle and Carol. Michelle Geathers Clark is the president and CEO of the United Way of Greater Greensboro, where she is focused on creating partnerships to end poverty. Carol Hardison is the CEO of Crisis Assistance Ministry. She directs Mecklenburg County's lead agency in providing housing stability to 200 families a day and creating and coaching to create pathways to financial security. Now, Michelle, let's start with you, and we're going to ask you to help us define the starting point of this very important discussion.
Thank you, Travis. And I do slides. The The reality that we all face is the American dream is actually broken for some people. And while we talk about degree attainment, some people are worried about food attainment, housing attainment. And so there are some social determinants of your life outcome. And if the American dream is broken for some, how is it broken, you might ask? The reality is if you are in the bottom 5% of income earners, in society today, it suggests that the children born into those households will never leave the bottom 5% of our community, 1/5. And is that reasonable? By virtue of who you're born to, and in some cases, what community you're born into. So if that is the backdrop, what should we be doing about it? Strategically, emotionally, intellectually. And at the United Way of Greater Greensboro, we decided that that is unacceptable. That it is unacceptable that Travis's story, my story, our story, would be written by virtue of the income level of our mothers and fathers. Because the American dream is that we earn more than our mothers and fathers, that we're healthier than our mothers and fathers, that we live longer than our mothers and fathers. But the reality in front of us in 2019 is that is not the case for some. And so what we did at the United Way of Greater Greensboro is we created a framework. We created a framework that supported us and allowed us to think about the starting point of 31% of our community our poverty rate is 31% higher than the national average. That is our reality. The national average on poverty is 14%. In Greensboro, North Carolina, it is 20% for adults and 25% for children. And so what we said is, what is it that we need to be doing? And we created a strategic framework that says, A, we have got to think about ending generational poverty. We've got to be clear that ending generational poverty means that we've got to look at pre-birth all the way to seniorhood. So we've got to be thinking about prenatally, how do we help families? And then how do we help our most precious citizens, our seniors, and everything in between? And what we said was, we have to start with basic needs. Basic needs must be met, as you can see in this framework. And we are suggesting that when basic needs are not met, when you are unhoused, you cannot think about the job. When you are hungry, it's hard to learn. When you are thinking about safety and security, it's very hard to be present at work. We also believe that you've got to be well, health-wise, and that means physical and mental wellness must exist from pre-birth to seniorhood. We also believe that learning is forever, and there is lifelong learning. We believe that early learning is critical, not just for our pre-K citizens, but as we've been talking about, all the way through adulthood, we've got to be thinking about learning. We also know that we've got to support people financially. You see, babies don't jump out the womb and go home all by themselves, right? So with that said, what financial resources are coming into that house to adequately support those children? While we appreciate WIC and SNAP, we also need much more than that. And you can throw in CHIP. We need much more than that. And we've got to get families financially stable. And we do that through jobs and income. And yes, 2 million by 2030 is great, but how about 2 million by 2030 for educational attainment matched to jobs. And what we are also suggesting is, how do you get that done? So here's how we're thinking about investing. We're investing in strategies that say strategic partners, nonprofits in our community of a critical importance. When people are in crisis, they need a place to go. And so we support those nonprofits. We also believe in integrated service delivery. We've got to talk to each other, share data. We also believe that innovation is very important in this sector. And I'm going to pause for a moment around strategic partners and innovative services. And very specifically, innovative services suggest, for example, that if you know a child has a learning difference and gets on the bus and goes to an after-school program at the Y, should that information follow that child to the Y so that they understand what that child needs in order to do his homework? And how about if that child is living with their grandparent who has diabetes? Shouldn't that information follow that child so they know that grandma potentially is not going to be able to get up and make a nutritious dinner? So how is it that we intervene at the most critical time in people's lives, be it grandma, young child, or teacher? So we believe in integrated service delivery, one-stop shop where we are helping people to, quote unquote, get the things that they need to be self-sufficient. We want to shorten the line to SNAP benefits, to WIC benefits, to unemployment, to hopelessness, to homelessness and despair. So this is how we are creating partnerships. We've been at this work for 5 years. We have empirical evidence verified for us by the other institution down the street from NC State at UNC Chapel Hill, who's come in and looked at our work and said, there is empirical, statistically valid data, and this is a compelling model for how to actually end generational poverty. It is possible. We've got to put the energy behind it. And I submit to you that the innovation bucket is equally as important. We need new ideas. When you are in corporate America, there is always R&D. There's always research and development dollars. We've got to do the same on society's most compelling issue, and that is generational poverty. And for those of you who tuned into the news yesterday, you'll know that the Nobel Peace Prize went to a set of economists that worked on what? Poverty, global poverty. In the United States, 44 million people live in poverty. It is worth our time and attention, and it is truly my honor to be in this room with all of you who are uniquely concerned with the root causes of generational poverty, and together we will be the first state in the United States to end generational poverty because of work that we are doing in this room. So I thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Michelle. Carol, as we pivot, one of the reasons why I love doing this and the work that we do at UNC-TV is because our mission is to contribute to the greater good by connecting North Carolinians to each other, the world, and endless possibilities. When you start taking a look at this work, how important is it to address stability as you are attempting to address systemic issues and connect people to opportunities?
Thank you, Travis. I think we've heard so many examples today about how can you continue your education if you're faced with homelessness, and how can you stay on the job if you can't get there due to your inability to make one car repair. What's so fascinating is about 5 years ago, our agency similarly began strategically some of the same work that Michelle in Greensboro has started. Crisis Assistance Ministry, like communities all over North Carolina in the 70s, was created when faith leaders realized that more and more people were coming to their doors asking for money. They needed a little bit for gas and a little bit for rent. And so faith leaders came together. Charlotte went to Winston, and Raleigh went to Guilford, and they all began meeting. And so in most all communities in the state, there's an agency, usually with some name like ministry because of the founding fathers in the community. Uniquely in the 1980s, though, Mecklenburg County did a study to try to understand why so many people were coming into needing emergency financial assistance. We like studies in Mecklenburg County. And so this study came out and said, why don't we take all of the federal dollars that are supposed to help people facing homelessness with utilities needs or water needs, why don't we outsource that to the entity that the faith community created? And in the 90s, the community said, let's continue to build that safety net, and they added material goods, beds, blankets, coats and shoes, refrigerators. Today it's over 1 million items a year, as a matter of fact. And so today at Crisis Assistance Ministry, you have one place where families go to have these basic needs met. Over 50,000 people a year. As was stated earlier, nearly 200 families a day. So the goal of Crisis Assistance Ministry is to put ourselves out of business. We don't want any more crisis assistance ministry. I don't want to come back here and we said we did 1.1 million items, 52,000 people last year. We must put ourselves out of business. But how do you do that when you provide a short-term solution to a long-term problem? That doesn't work on paper. So we got to pencil and paper about 5 years ago and said, we've got to connect systems, the theme of today. And so there's two methods that we approached, and that is, how can we stop people from coming in the first place, and how can we know more about why people came when they came to the financial emergency room? And so this chart that you see was developed 2 years ago by the University of North Carolina at Charlotte Urban Institute, shout out. They went through 5 years of our data, about 250,000 records, and met with our customers, met with our staff, did research, and came out and said, these are the 6 personas of the people who come to Crisis Assistance Ministry. And so much like the way Amazon knows what to suggest to sell to me because they know my persona, we now know when someone comes, and it makes a big difference. After we stop your emergency, after we make sure you're not going to be homeless, it makes a big difference if you're a job seeker or if you're health limited, right? It makes a big difference if you're temporarily stressed with your income or you have a fixed income. If you have a fixed income and you live in this county, your rent has gone up 25% in the past 5 years. How does that work on a fixed income? And so now that we have the personas, let me give you an example. So there's a woman named Sheila. She worked about 1 mile from here at a fast food restaurant for 20 years. Pretty dedicated worker. Showed up at 6:30 every morning, cutting lettuce for the salads. And she had unexpected expenses, came to Crisis Assistance. She was proud of her 20-year record. She had been given a pen as a token of appreciation. And she used that pen to fill out an application for emergency financial assistance. And so after we stopped the crisis, it ensured the fear and the trauma and the stress in her household would be gone. We asked Sheila, since we knew her persona, it's in the underemployed segment, we asked Sheila, would you be interested in spending just a little bit more time on some coaching and counseling and goal setting? And now that the stress of the fear of the eviction is past, yes. So Sheila began to work on a program that's called Your Money, Your Goals by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And she found out that her biggest challenge was using her own voice and having their own confidence to go ask for help and ask for a raise. She asked for a raise. The employer immediately said yes, but then with this newfound confidence, for the first time in 20 years, she went and applied for a job, and today she's this close to making a living wage. That's because we knew her persona. And just a little bit more coaching and counseling. We're not going to mission creep. We're still in short term. So what about the other path? Let's keep them from having to come in the first place. So as we've talked about here today, an education and a path to a job and higher income are the two best paths to economic opportunity. So we went to agencies in this community that had proven outcomes in those arenas and struck up a unique collaboration. So an example is actually the Nurse Family Partnership Program. You all are familiar, I'm sure, with this evidence-based program where a nurse practitioner comes into the life of a low-income mother. And it turns out that some of their data shows that their mother is able to improve their income. The child is much more ready for school, in addition, of course, to healthy birth and numerous incredible outcomes. So Caring is the agency in Charlotte that runs Nurse Family Partnership. And so what we guarantee is while the nurse practitioner is in the life of the customer, and by the way, the most important thing in all of these situations is a person who's connected, and you've heard that throughout today, with them, or they have a trusted relationship. And so we guarantee this nurse practitioner and all the nurse practitioners at Caring that during the course of your service, this family will not be homeless. This family will have winter coats. This family will keep the water running. And so you can do what you do best, and you won't be distracted, and they won't be distracted, and they won't be fearful and stressful. And so when mom has a baby, that's 4, 6, 8 weeks without income. We're going to make sure mom is not homeless. And so what we do together is each takes our existing mission, and we just stretch a little. Their caseworkers are willing to share information with our caseworkers so we can help the mom without her ever having to know that crisis assistance was in the mix, right? Sort of a systems approach. And our caseworkers are willing to train their caseworkers and look at a different way of serving, where people don't come in the door and have to wait in line. They serve them in partnership on the phone, a relationship with the caseworker. So, in conclusion, there's 3 things that are making these 2 models work. We're building customer-centric solutions where we put the customer in the middle and we have the agencies connect. Instead of the customer having to go agency to agency, we may need to connect them, as we talked earlier, to food stamps. We have food cards. We have a food bank. They may need that car repair bill. We had someone just last week who had been overrun by bed bugs. Well, yes, we replaced all the furniture from our furniture bank, but that was the short-term solution. The house needed to be fumigated. So we got the exterminator in there and got the house fumigated. So just by stretching slightly our mission and connecting to another agency, the gap that families fall through is eliminated. So customer-centric, based on best practices and unique collaborations. Maybe a year from now, I won't say it was 1 million items and 50,000 people.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Terry. And I want to remind you that also still send your text questions in. Leslie will come up at the end and will read or share some of your questions so you can get some answers from these subject matter experts. So David and Tara, let's pivot for a moment. I'm going to introduce both of you, but what I want you to do is respond to some of the things you've heard and many of the things today, and then I'll ask you some follow-up questions. So David Hollers is the executive director of the Centralina Workforce Development Board. In his role, he works with the board to partner with economic development and educational organizations serving career seekers and employers, investing in the futures of Anson, Cabarrus, Iredell, Lincoln, Rowan, Stanley, and Union counties.
Close enough.
Close enough?
Iredell.
Iredell. Did I say Iredell? Iredell.
Well, that's okay. It happens to the best of us.
Well, my glasses are fogged up. That's why I couldn't read it correctly. And Tara K. Myers is the Deputy Secretary of Health and Human Services. She began her career with DHHS as a rehabilitation counselor. And in this capacity, she had a variety of caseloads, including high school transition, deaf and hard of hearing, and traumatic and acquired brain injuries. And as Deputy Secretary, she now provides leadership and oversight of the Human Services Division. Could you please welcome David and Tara to the stage and give them a warm welcome. So David and Tara, I'll start with you, David. Just initial responses to some of the information and strategies that you've heard from both Michelle and Carol.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you for allowing me to be here. It's great to be able to represent all 23 workforce development boards in North Carolina and talk about the work we do. But pivoting off of what Carolyn talked about, is that it does take a lot of different organizations to make things work. Our workforce development boards are focused on serving career seekers and employers, and we'll talk about what we do for career seekers first. That is really part of what is done through the local workforce development boards. We are responsible for all the NC Works career centers throughout North Carolina. We are responsible for their overall operation, oversight. That's our job. We want to make them sure they are great places for career seekers and employers. And that takes not just the individuals within those four walls, but it takes those agencies within our counties. It takes United Way. It takes Cooperative Christian Ministry. Goodwill. It takes all the organizations, housing authorities, all the organizations who make those things work. We put this to the test in Central Carolina on July 30th, 2003. We were faced with 4,650 North Carolinians being laid off in one day in Cabarrus and Rowan counties through the closing politics. And you deal with that many people, and that many people who do not have a high school diploma, which was over half, in 2003, 21st century labor market, who've never used a computer, who've always lived in the same house right across from the mill, and you're talking about helping the individuals make that transition. We couldn't do it alone. We had to address their first needs, which is food, shelter. How am I going to get through the next day and provide for my family? We weren't talking about jobs and careers or unemployment insurance or any of that. We were talking about helping them to become successful and be able to make it through the next day so they can get to the mindset of thinking about career, of changing their lives. And we did that, but it took a lot of partners to do that. We do that every day through our NC Works Career Centers. People come in who are looking for work, who are looking for career changes, who are looking for a better life. And that takes individuals within those centers understanding who those individuals are and what resources are available in our community. We're very fortunate in Central Carolina, 7 counties, and we have great partners we work with throughout our counties. They are there to help individuals. We are there focused on helping people stay in our communities. One of the things that I heard earlier in talking about education, it's great. We talked about all the opportunities, whether it's 4-year or 2-year. Did anybody ever stop to ask the individual what they want to do first? What are they good at? What are they interested in? What's their passion? Believe me, I've been doing this for 40 years. I wouldn't be in it if I didn't have a passion for helping people and helping businesses. I think a lot of people lose that when they're talking about that. I understand having to have a job. I understand that. I worked 2 jobs, 3 jobs even when I was going to college to pay for my education because my parents couldn't afford it. How do you get to that point in helping people understand that? That's part of what we do in our region in Central Carolina. We have a tool called CentralCarolinaCareerHeadlight.com where people can go in at no cost and find out, based upon their interest, what their skills are, what job opportunities are for jobs and careers in this region, not anywhere else, not in Atlanta, not in California, not in New York, right here in this region. Why? Because our board's invested in keeping people educated, trained, and in this region, working for our employers. Our employers are begging for people right now. And through our NC Works Career Centers, we work every day with our partners in our community to help people overcome their obstacles, to be able to have the opportunity to get the training, the education, and the careers they want to do. And I always talk about people being career seekers, not job seekers. We've all had jobs. Many of us have had careers. It makes a difference, and that career may be across different spectrums. And we help individuals every day who come in and say, I want to do better for my life. I want to do better for my family. I want to do better for my community. How do we help people do that? We give them the education, the skills, the knowledge to do that. And I encourage you, all of you as parents, to think about the same thing when you're trying to work with your young people. I really appreciate Representative Horn talking about his future son-in-law being a lineman. Hopefully he got his training through Stanley Community College or Cleveland Community College. They have excellent lineman training programs there. But as parents, we got to help our young people to understand that, and individuals who are even changing careers. Be an educated consumer. You do the same thing when you're buying a new iPhone or you're buying any kind of technology. You research it. You find out what the costs are. You weigh the costs and benefits. Do the same with education, too. Don't always assume it's a 4-year. Don't always assume it's a 2-year. We also have to educate people for them to be educated consumers when they're looking for work. Talk to the employer. Employers right now are in a war for talent. We're educating employers every day about how they can be employers of choice, because they're fighting with their fellow employer for the talents out there. How can they make their company more family-friendly? How can they offer better benefits, better opportunities for growth, better career advancements for individuals? I think one of the great things that I see that helps, and we talked a lot about student loan debts, is a great program in Union County and Anson County, the Anson Advantage, and working with South Piedmont Community College. If you finish 2 years at South Piedmont Community College, you can go to Wingate University, a great private university right there in Union County, for $2,500 a year. $2,500 a year. 2 years, $5,000. The worst thing we can do with individuals, whether they are young people or people changing mid-careers, is saddle them with $40,000 and $50,000 student loan debt. That puts individuals in the poverty hole quicker than anything else. Educate yourself on how to be a great consumer and understand how you can get the great education and skills you need for that. Also, we want to have individuals, when they're looking for work, educate themselves to ask employers, what can you offer me if I'm bringing my talent to your company to make your company successful? How are you going to reinvest in me? Many companies are willing to invest in helping individuals become successful and become part of that company by paying for their education. Great example, Iredell County. See, I got it right that time. In Iredell County, there's a great company called Doosan, make generators. Had a young individual who came out of Iredell Statesville Schools, completed high school. He was career ready because of great career and technical education programs through that school system and many of our other school systems. He took the job at Doosan. Doosan saw so much promise in him, and because of his skill set, they paid for him to get his 2-year degree in electrical engineering at Mitchell Community College in Statesville. There's almost potential in him. They finished and helped him get 2 years and finish up his degree in electrical engineering at UNCC. He is now 25 years old, making over $80,000 a year with 0 student loan debt. Why is that important? Because you can go to any cocktail party and tell other parents, hey, my son is making $80,000, has no student loan debt. He has his own house, his own car, he's getting married. Is that going to become a great person in your community? Absolutely. Is he going to be invested with that company? Absolutely. Is that company a great employer of choice? Yes. That's what we try to work with our workforce development boards every day, is make sure you got employers and career seekers understanding that, and great support from our community partners and organizations to make it successful.
Excellent, excellent. That's awesome. So, Tara, let's get you in on the conversation. Respond to things that you've heard, some of the excellent examples, especially in Iredell County, anywhere that you believe they are exemplars that you can speak to.
Sure. You're not just a little bit partial to your area. It doesn't sound like, but...
Yeah, I am. I love our counties.
I just want to start off by saying that I recognize and applaud Carol and Michelle's programs and all of the community-based programs that operate within North Carolina. The work that you do, the work that we collectively do, is tremendous work, and there's a lot more work to be done. I think we've all accomplished a lot, but there's a lot yet to be accomplished and more successes to come together. One of the things that I want to point out, and some keywords that we have focused on throughout the day, are partnerships. and stability, economic mobility, families, and individuals. And I truly believe that our community-based organizations, partnering with units of government, state, local, federal, our advocacy groups, and our individuals that are the recipients of our services. I think there are gaps to be identified. I think our programs work to meet unmet needs. We all know that our gaps and our unmet needs often outweigh and outnumber the resources that any one of us has at any given time. And so that's why partnership is vital, and that's why the partnership is key to pooling our resources and to being able to help individuals help themselves and be more self-sufficient and self-supporting. I do believe that within DHHS, we are very proud of the partnerships that we have with various entities and organizations. For example, we receive federal funding through the Community Services Block Grant that we can then disperse and provide assistance and oversight, monitoring, and technical assistance to 34 community action agencies across the state. And what these community action agencies are charged with doing in collaboration with DHHS is provide education, housing, access to food, access to transportation, and access to medical care so that they can achieve their goals of success. Promoting resiliency. We are also very proud to sponsor and provide oversight and assistance through the Emergency Solutions Grant. What this grant does is primarily focus on homelessness, those individuals that are homeless or at risk of being homeless. With this grant, we provide shelters within the state of North Carolina with services and assistance and support to help those individuals kind of pull themselves up by their bootstraps, giving them opportunities for training and, again, opportunities for health care. Many of these programs, as you understand, will overlap, but I think that overlap is crucial and key so that we are meeting the needs of the person as a whole. I think stability on so many different levels is the key ingredient to upward mobility. And I think those partnerships are also a key to helping us pull those resources so that we can work to help those individuals be successful. One of the things I would be remiss if I did not mention is our Healthy Opportunities and our NC Care 360 pilot within the department. This is a resource platform that is doing great things and has recently served its 1,000th referral within North Carolina in just a very short period of time. And what our Healthy Opportunities and NC Care 360 platform does is link health care and medical providers to the human services and the community-based organizations throughout the state. Oftentimes, Secretary Cohen will share a story where an individual, a young mom, unemployed, seeks medical care, and oftentimes our medical professions really just look at that health component, look at that medical piece, and oftentimes does not recognize some of the things that are going on at home or in their community that correlate to the health of that individual. And so with NC Care 360 and our Healthy Opportunities pilots and platform, we're bridging that gap so that when I go into a doctor's office, if I am food insecure, if I don't have transportation, or if I don't have other mental health services that can help me and guide me through, then there's a platform that creates that bridge and that gap and kind of closes that loop. And so there's the referral made, there's follow-up, and then there's constant feedback so that they can track the success and the progress of that individual that's seeking services together. Now, you heard Governor Cooper talk about Medicaid expansion. With Medicaid expansion, again, that helps bridge the gap, close the loop, and helps individuals create an opportunity for access to health care, access to resources, and access to opportunities. Within the department, we also have 3 main priorities at this point, and that is our Early Childhood Action Plan, our Medicaid expansion, and tackling the opioid crisis. And again, through Medicaid expansion, we truly believe that we can help individuals achieve the opportunities for access to those medical services and the human services. David talked about all of the tremendous work and the partnerships that they have with their communities. And within the Department of Health and Human Services, specifically some of our divisions that focus on employment are those divisions that work with individuals with disabilities. And oftentimes we find that individuals with disabilities and those that are disadvantaged tend to need additional help and support. And so we feel at the department that our main goal is to really help level that playing field, because we believe that everybody in the state of North Carolina deserves an opportunity to work. And we feel that those employers that are working in tandem with us deserve an opportunity to have individuals that can meet their bottom line. And oftentimes it's an untapped resource. So we partner very closely with Commerce and specifically with Workforce Solutions. We have staff that are embedded in our NC Career Centers. We have staff at the management level that are also participatory on the workforce boards throughout the state. We also partner very closely with our local community colleges and our universities, and are very proud of that, because with that work that we're doing, we are educating employers and we're educating the community on how important it is for us to meet their bottom line and help bridge that skill gap. So with that, I thank you, and I'll turn it back over to you.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. And what I want to do is, we have a few minutes. I want to kind of ask a question to the whole panel. But first, let me ask the audience by a show of hands. Many times we talk about collective impact, collaboration, and partnership. And on paper, that sounds really good. Just by a show of hands, how many of you engaged in collective impact work or collaborative work or partnerships have found implementation somewhat of a challenge? Thank you for your honesty. Now, subject matter experts, what is the key to successful collaboration and partnership? We only have about 2 minutes. Real quickly, could you give us a key example of how to effectively partner, bringing forth partnerships so that you can enhance your work by collaboration? Is there one rule of thumb? Or?
I think the number one thing for us is leadership. It takes individuals to be able to understand the two partners or more than two partners getting together. Everybody has something to bring to the table. Everybody has an end game on that. If you understand that, you can come to some common ground on that. Like we did with the North Carolina Manufacturing Institute. We brought together Roy and Cabarrus Community College, Chambers, Economic Development, our Workforce Development Board, came up with an 8-week certified production technician training program that had 40 employers involved, that had great success, where employers pay back in money to help fund future scholarships, and it ends up with individuals having 2 national certifications in less than 8 weeks, and we have employers begging for people, graduates from that. But it took a lot of individuals and leadership saying, let's do something different. Let's make this something that will help our community. And it met a need for employers, met a need for the workers too. That's all part of what it takes in leadership. Where's the goal? Where's the leadership? Where's the buy-in? Where's everybody understanding each other's end game on that?
Thank you, David. And Tara, could you share a nugget?
Sure. Would just like to piggyback on that a little bit. You know, we believe that we are one team, and I think with being one team, we have that collective common goal. And so in looking at a lot of what David was saying, we have individuals that have often worked in silos. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that Secretary Cohen has pushed within the Department of Health and Human Services is do not work in your silos. You know, work across divisions, work across the state, and then expand that outside of the department with your partners, other state entities, your community-based organizations, your employers. We are one team. We're one North Carolina. And with that, if we are badgeless and we work together and we are achieving the common goal, then we are creating opportunities for people that might not otherwise have had those opportunities.
Thank you, Tara. Michelle and Carol, real quick, can you bottom line it for us?
The people that you're trying to serve. I think that we spend a lot of time fixing people instead of listening to people. So I would say listen before you solve.
Thank you, Carol.
Ditto all three. I would just add in the leadership, it's about that relationship. Danielle Frazier, who runs Charlotte Works here, we had an important conversation on break about the relationship that we're trying to build between agencies so that when people are seeking a job, they don't become homeless. But it starts with us being able to sit down and have that relationship.
Yes, can you join me in giving this panel a very warm round of applause?